Hi, Colts. Yesterday we talked about dividing shapes into equal shares, two equal shares, making them into two halves. And today we're going to talk about another way to divide shapes into equal shares, and we're going to make them into quarters or one fourth or fourths. Three different ways to say it. So before we get going, you're going to need a couple of things. The first thing you're going to need is you're going to need four rectangles. So what I did was I grabbed a piece of paper and I folded it in half. And then I folded it in half again. And then when I opened it, I had four creases. So I could cut on the creases and create four rectangles. And I know they're rectangles because they have four sides, like a rectangle, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they have four square corners, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the two opposite sides are the same length. So you'll need four of those. And then you're going to need three or four squares. And I'm just going to use sticky notes because I happen to have them and they're square. But if not, have an adult help you to cut a piece of paper into four equal squares, which means that it's a shape with four sides and four square corners, and that all the sides are the same length. So it makes it a special rectangle called a square. And then the last thing is you're going to need 2 to 3 circles. So what I did was I took a glass from my house and I just traced the outline of the glass. And then I'm going to just cut on that line, remembering, like Mr. Posey always says, turn the paper, not the scissors. So hold the scissors pointing up. And get yourself a couple of circles. I go ahead and pause the recording right now and go make that. Four rectangles, 3 or 4 squares, and 2 or 3 circles. All right, now that you have what you need, let's start with some of these rectangles. So yesterday we talked about halves. So let's go ahead and fold one of the rectangles into 2 equal shares or 2 halves. All right, so we have 1 half and 1 half, and they are the same size, so they're equal. And I'm just gonna, to make it a little clearer, draw the line, not very straight, but you get what I'm saying. The line down the center of that to show you the 2 equal halves. So that's pretty easy, but let me show you a trick. So if we want to make fourths or quarters, what you do is you take your paper and you fold it into half, and then you fold it in half again. And then when you open that up, you end up with 4 equal quarters, and we write that like this in math. So there's 1 fourth, 1 fourth, 1 fourth, and 1 fourth. So that's one way to do it, but actually there are so many ways to fold a rectangle and get it 4 equal shares. So I'm going to have you pause and use your other papers to fold your rectangles to try to come up with other ways to make 1 fourth. All right, now that you're back with me, I'm sure you come up with a great variety of ways to make 1 fourth. Let's see if we've come up with some of the same ways. So we talked about folding the paper in half and then folding it in half again. Now last time we folded kind of like the taco fold up. This time I want to do another hot dog fold. If I do another hot dog fold, look at what happens. Right? 4 equal parts, 1, 2, 3, 4. All 4 of the parts are the same size. They're just in a different shape than the first one that we did, but it's still, these are both divided up into 4 equal shares or into fourths. So there's 2 ways to do it. Another way that I know how to do it is to take it and fold it in half again the taco way. And then let me see. Let's try this. There we go. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 equal or 4 parts. So is this paper divided into fourths? If you said no, you're right, because these parts are not equal in size. So we don't have 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. We have a weird combination of that. But there are other ways. One way you can do it is to bring the corners together. We did that yesterday. So if I bring the opposite diagonal corners together, I didn't do that quite. Having a harder time this morning. But let's see. There we go. Actually, I'm not really bringing the corners together. I'm kind of folding on the corners. That's why it's so hard for me this morning. But if I open it up, I'm going to draw the lines for you so you can see them now that I've made so many folds. And look at that. 4 equal parts. 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. So there are 3 different ways to come up with it. Let me label these. 1/4 or 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. So there's 2. So why don't you take a couple of minutes to see if you can come up with some other ways. If you haven't already done that, you can try many different circles. And when you come back to me, I will show you a variety of ways to make a rectangle into 4 equal parts. All right, so here are 2 more ways to divide rectangles into 4 equal parts. For this one, instead of folding kind of like the long way or the short way, if you fold the long way, your 4 equal parts will be going diagonally across the paper. And then this one was the one that I was trying to do and struggling with, so I drew it out. But a way to do that is to take, see if I can even figure it out, the rectangle and fold it in half. And then I think this is it. Kind of it. My diagonal lines are going the opposite ways, but it's still 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. All right, so now let's do some squares. So we know that if we take a square and we fold it one way, we'll have halves. If we take the paper and we fold it again, a hot dog way, we'll end up with 4 equal parts or quarters. So why don't you take a couple minutes to fold your paper to see if you can come up with different ways to make quarters, and I'll do it and we'll see if we have a match. All right, well, take a look at what I came up with. That original one with 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. A second one where the rectangle is divided up horizontally into quarters, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. This one, same fold, but my lines are going vertically. So, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. And then this one, where I was able to fold my paper into a triangle and then fold it again into another triangle to make these triangle shape divisions and equal shares of 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. So 4 different ways to divide a square up into quarters. And maybe there are other ways. If you have a little extra time, you could maybe challenge a mom or dad or a brother or sister to see who can come up with the most ways to divide up a square or divide up a rectangle. And one way to check it to be sure is if after you divide it up, if you cut it apart right on those dividing lines, and then you lay the pieces on top of each other, and they're all, just about the same size, very close to being the same size, then you know that you have 4 equal shares. And then the last shape we're going to work with is circles. So one way to divide up a circle is to fold it in half down and fold it across. And then you end up with a shape that's divided up like this. And I'll draw on the dividing lines. And you end up with that. Another way to do it is instead of folding it straight down, if you fold it on the diagonal, and then you fold it up, you end up with quarters like this. But here's the trick. If I turn the circle, it's really exactly the same thing. So I can have my quarters like this. I can have my quarters just a little turned, and it's really all the same. If I were to cut these up, they would be the same size. All right. So for the work that you're going to do today independently, the sheet that was connected to yesterday's lesson has that bottom half, and that bottom half has dividing shapes up using pencil into quarters or fourths, and then coloring just one side. So if I had the circle and I divided it up and I colored just one side, it would look something like this. So I'm coloring 1/4 of it. Do you think it matters which portion I color in? It doesn't, because they're exactly the same. So this is 1/4, and so are these. This is just 1/4 colored in. All right, thanks so much. We'll see you soon.